by an economic observer. If you look at the spreadsheets in Washington or Wall Street, the American economy is a roaring engine of resilience. GDP is growing, unemployment remains historically low, and wages, on paper, are finally beating inflation. But walk into a grocery store in Ohio, a rental office in Florida, or a kitchen table discussion in Nevada, and you will hear a different story. You will hear a story of exhaustion, anxiety, and a pervasive sense that the math just doesn't add up anymore. We are living in what has been aptly termed the Windchill Economy. Just as a thermometer might read 35 degrees Fahrenheit while the biting wind makes it feel like 15 degrees Fahrenheit, our economic indicators say prosperity, but our bank accounts scream crisis. This isn't just a matter of pessimism, it is a structural failure of how we measure economic health versus how human beings actually experience survival. Having analyzed the current landscape, I believe we are at a pivotal moment where the social contract of the American dream is being rewritten in real time. Here is my perspective on why this is happening, why the vibes are actually valid data, and where I predict we are heading in late 2025 and beyond. The illusion of the average consumer. The core problem with the current economic narrative is the reliance on averages. The headline, "Wages outpace inflation," is technically true, but it is statistically misleading. When a CEO gets a 15% raise and a warehouse worker gets a 2% raise, the average wage goes up. But the warehouse worker is still drowning. The data shows that the gap between wage growth and inflation has narrowed significantly, but even when wages were winning in 2024 and early 2025, they were merely playing catch-up to the catastrophic price hikes of 2021 to 2023. The sticky price trap. Economists love to talk about the rate of inflation slowing down, disinflation. But regular people don't care about the rate, they care about the price. If a carton of eggs goes from $2 to $5, and then inflation slows, so it only goes to $5.10, the economists cheer. The consumer, however, is still furious that eggs are $5.10. We are suffering from the cumulative trauma of price hikes. The 29% wage gain over the decade sounds impressive until you realize the big three of survival, housing, food, and energy have eaten all of it. You cannot substitute your way out of paying rent or buying electricity. This is why the windchill feels so biting. The cold is coming from the items we cannot escape. 2. The psychological hangover of the pandemic. We cannot underestimate the psychological whiplash of the last 5 years. The article rightly points out that the pandemic gave millions a taste of financial security. Stimulus checks, paused student loans, and zero travel expenses allowed the working class to build a small nest egg. For a brief shining moment, the boot was off their neck. Then 2022 arrived, and the boot came back down, harder than before. The rapid erosion of that savings buffer created a sense of loss that is more painful than never having had the money at all. Behavioral economics tells us that humans feel loss twice as intensely as they enjoy gains. The transition from "I finally have $5,000 in savings" to "I am using credit cards to buy groceries" has created a deep-seated resentment and distrust in the system. This isn't just about money, it's about the moving goalposts. The unspoken promise of America was, work hard, get a raise, buy a house. Now, people are working hard, getting a raise, and finding the house costs $200,000 more than it did 3 years ago, with a mortgage rate that doubles the monthly payment. The game feels rigged because, for late entrants to the housing market, it is. 3. The K-shaped reality, the Costco economy. The most insightful observation in the current analysis is the Costco economy concept. We are seeing a bifurcation of the American consumer. The upper K-leg, the asset owners. If you owned a home and stocks before 2020, you are likely feeling great. Your net worth has exploded. You are the one keeping the luxury travel and high-end dining industries afloat. The lower K-leg, the wage earners. If you rent and live off labor income, you are being crushed. You are trading down. You aren't shopping at Whole Foods, you are at Walmart. You aren't buying the brand name detergent, you're buying the generic bulk version at Costco. The fact that lower income wage growth has slumped to 1.4% half the rate of inflation, is a flashing red light. This is the seed of social unrest. When the bottom 40% of the population sees the stock market hitting record highs while they can't afford a Thanksgiving dinner, the social fabric begins to fray. For predictions, where do we go from here? Based on the trajectory of the Windchill economy, here are my predictions for the next 12 to 24 months. 1. The vibe recession becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Even if the technical definition of a recession isn't met, 2 quarters of negative GDP growth, we will enter a behavioral recession. Consumers, exhausted by high prices and shrinking real wages, will aggressively pull back on discretionary spending. Prediction: we will see a wave of bankruptcies in the affordable luxury sector, mid-tier restaurants, boutique fitness studios, and non-essential subscription services. The middle class will cut the fat to save the bone. 2. The housing standoff will break, but not how you hope. The housing market is currently frozen. Sellers won't sell because they want to keep their 3% mortgage rates. Buyers can't buy because of prices. Prediction: prices will not crash, but they will stagnate for years. We will become a rentership society similar to parts of Europe. The American dream of homeownership will be rebranded or delayed into people's 40s. We will see a massive rise in multi-generational households as the only viable way to combat living costs. 3. The rise of value wars. Corporations have spent the last 3 years raising prices to pad profits, often called greedflation. They have hit the ceiling of what consumers will tolerate. Prediction: 2025 and 2026 will be the years of the price war. Major retailers like Amazon, Walmart, and Target will engage in aggressive discounting to win back the cash-strapped consumer. Deflation will finally appear in goods, electronics, clothes, furniture, even as services, insurance, healthcare remain expensive. 4. The political reckoning. The Windchill effect will decide elections. Politicians touting GDP numbers will be punished by voters who care about the price of milk. Prediction: populism will continue to rise. Any candidate, regardless of party, who acknowledges that the system is broken and offers direct relief for cost of living, price caps, housing subsidies, wage mandates, will gain massive traction. The electorate is no longer interested in macroeconomic theory, they want relief. Final thought. The Windchill economy is not a temporary weather pattern, it is climate change for our wallets. The era of cheap money, cheap goods, and easy housing is over. We are entering a period of economic sobriety. The metrics that economists use, GDP, CPI, unemployment rate, are becoming increasingly irrelevant to the daily experience of the average citizen. Until policymakers address the cost of life, housing, food, energy, rather than just the rate of inflation, the American public will continue to feel cold, no matter how brightly the sun shines on Wall Street.